everyone. I'm Holly with Social Good Families, and I'm here to bring you another expert interview in an area of social good in order to help families like yours and ours be more effective in the ways that we engage in changing the world. So our focus today is on quality education, which is number 4 of the 17 global goals. If you haven't looked those up yet, I highly recommend it. And today we're focusing on number 4, quality education. Our expert today is Jackson Olsen. Hey, Jackson.
Hello.
Thanks for being with us. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him and his expertise in this area. He began his career in education as a Teach for America Corps member in 2009, and he studied U.S. history and journalism, where he graduated cum laude before he started teaching U.S. history at Henderson Middle School for 3 years. And he earned a master's of school administration through the Northeast Leadership Academy at NC State University and became an administrative intern with Zeb Vance Elementary School before becoming the assistant principal at Northern Vance High School. But then in 2015, Jackson founded Henderson Collegiate High School, a high-performing college prep high school in Vance County, North Carolina. Meanwhile, Jackson is pursuing his doctorate in education leadership at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Not only all that, he's also the author of a really great book called Teaching for America. I actually have my copy right here. I highly recommend it. It kind of talks about his experience with Teach for America. And he's also a devoted husband and loving father and my kid brother. So, boom, there you have it. Thank you, Jackson, for being with us today.
No problem.
I would love for you to give us first your initial thoughts on the lofty goal of just quality education for all. And I mean, is it attainable? It seems like a crazy, difficult thing to, globally. Can we do it? What are your thoughts there?
I'm going to start smaller because global is really big. And so I would start by saying that I do believe it is possible. And the reason why I believe that is because you can look at examples of a quality education being provided to a group of students. And when you can point to that example that it's happening anywhere, then the question becomes not if it can be done, but how can you take what's working somewhere and scale it up and make it or realize it for different groups of people, for different communities, states, nations, etc. So I do believe that equality education for all is possible. It hasn't happened yet, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But if we're just talking domestically here in the United States, there are plenty of examples of schools, whether they're in rich neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods, suburbia, rural America. Regardless of where they are, there are examples that we can point to say, yes, a quality education is possible. You have to have all the right ingredients. You have to have the right people at the right places. But when those things come together, yes, it's possible. So my experience, of course, is as an American educator, my belief is that it's possible to scale it beyond our borders. But we're having a really hard time as a nation right now just doing it across the board for every American child. Right now, too many students are still being born into either really good or really not great, or maybe simply adequate education systems based on their zip code, based on their geography, not because I'm an American citizen and every American citizen gets this kind of education. That's not true. They're entitled to that kind of education, but they're not getting it. So I'm optimistic that it's possible. The realization of it will take quite a bit of a lot of things.
Okay, so I'm glad that you're focusing on the domestic, because that's where your expertise lies, right? Here at home in the United States, quality education. It will take a lot of things. What are some of those things? What do we need? Like, what are some of the challenges that we're facing that you've seen?
Yeah. The number one predictor of a quality education is the person standing at the front of the room. And so you could spend a lot of time talking about, different trends in education and these kind of buzzwords, and it's the curriculum and it's this and it's that. But really, when you get down to the core issue of whether or not your student is going to receive a good education or not, it comes down to the person who is standing at the front of the room, the teacher. And so to solve education simply, we just need to have really good teachers in front of every single classroom, in every school, in every community in this country. That's the challenge. And I think, to be honest, that's the biggest challenge facing education, public education in general right now, is that there is a shortage of highly qualified, strong teachers. And that's partly that's partly due to the way that we've been treating teachers, generally speaking, as a country. We don't value our teachers the way that other countries do, the way that the Finns value their teachers, or the South Koreans value their teachers. And it's shown in a number of ways. It's shown by the conditions that we ask them to work in, the salary that we ask them to take home as a living wage, just generally the way we speak about teaching, the old adage that is commonly repeated of, well, those who can are lawyers and doctors, those who can't teach. And so, like, even those kinds of stigmas or stereotypes, the fact that teaching isn't an elevated profession in the country is part of the reason why it's hard to go into. If I'm a college senior and I'm looking at my prospects of either going to law school, dental school, medical school, business school, or becoming a teacher seems like almost an impossibility for someone to choose who just doesn't seriously care about being a teacher. If I'm just kind of an undecided person looking at the stacking up of options and a future career possibilities and earning power and quality of life, teachers are just generally kind of crapped on, to be honest, and kind of shoved into the back corner of our minds. And so that in turn leads to a lower quality of teacher being put in front of classrooms. And then this, of course, will disproportionately affect low-income communities, minority communities, communities where it's either harder to teach or that it's just the conditions are not ideal, the principal is changing every year, there's not a lot of community support for the school, whatever the case may be. So who really ends up losing in this scenario are the students and the families who live in a district or in a school zone where there's a revolving door of principals, a revolving door of teachers, struggling to find highly qualified people to put in front of the room. And the result is these students are continually neglected, and it's kind of this death spiral. The teachers who are good enough at their jobs, a lot of them will see the greener pastures of a better school district and go to those school districts which disproportionately serve white and higher income students. And so the gap between rich and poor and black and white, or minority and white students, keeps getting bigger and bigger. And so that's really one of the biggest challenges. Also, one of the biggest solutions, if we were able to start really treating teachers better, paying them better, providing them with things that we know that they want, things like more professional development and training. If we could provide them with more flexibility or autonomy, like, we could get really, really great people into these schools, into classrooms, and we could make this a South Korea where they call their teachers nation builders instead of those who can't.
Fascinating. Huh. All right, so as I'm listening to you talk, I know I talked about what your qualifications are, but can you tell us, what you do specifically right now? How is that helping to, or giving you insight and helping to achieve the goal of quality education? Give us a little bit about what your day-to-day is, and maybe go and talk about how it began with Teach for America, because maybe a lot of our listeners aren't really familiar with what that is. So 2 things.
Sure. Teach for America is a nonprofit organization that recruits usually recent college graduates, but it recruits from a variety of places as well. But usually it's recent college graduates who are uncertain about what their next step in life is, whether they're planning to go to law school or dental school or just maybe become a teacher. It recruits people to fill some of those teaching vacancies that I was talking about, to go into the toughest schools in America and serve for 2 years as a teacher. That could be in an inner city, like in Los Angeles or New York, or it could be in rural America, could be on an Indian reservation, could be just anywhere where there's a real need for teachers in America's public schools. My wife and I joined Teach for America in 2009 and were assigned to teach in the Eastern North Carolina region, which is a really large, vast, expansive region that has a very low population because it's mostly rural tobacco fields and cotton fields and peanut fields in eastern rural North Carolina. Uh-huh. We were assigned to teach in Henderson, North Carolina, which is in Vance County. Henderson, the time that we got there, was ranked 115th out of 115 school districts for graduation rates in the state of North Carolina. Wow. So, and it at one point had the highest teen pregnancy rate in the state. I think we dropped to number 4 on the list. So we came into a community that was really struggling on a lot of different levels. And we ended up doing our 2 years. We taught for 2 years. My wife taught at the high school. She taught Spanish and earth science, and I taught history at the middle school in the 8th grade. After 2 years, we kind of had this realization that we weren't done, that the work wasn't done, that we couldn't just, ignore this whole education crisis. Yeah. Like something you would just discard at the Goodwill. We're like, well, that doesn't feel right. There's still so much that needs to be done here. So all that to answer your original question is of what are we doing right now to provide a quality education for all. The biggest thing I think that we're doing on a day-to-day basis is that we are serving a group of students and a community that has all of the characteristics of poverty, of whether it's through healthcare or access to healthcare, access to food security, just general family support, family income, unemployment. This is a community that has had a lot of challenges over time. And it all really happened over the last 20 years as industrial manufacturing jobs went and left in the 90s and 2000s, and mills closed down, and just a lot of economic depression. And then, of course, as a result, the school system started to decline as well. We taught here in the traditional school system at the same time that the Henderson Collegiate Charter School was starting. And it started as just a 4th grade, and then it grew 1 year every year. So 4th, and then in year 2, it became 4th and 5th, etc. I was hired to start their high school in 2015. And now we're coming to the end of our 2nd year of operation, of existence. And so we serve right now approximately 200 students in 9th and 10th grade. Next year, we'll add another grade, and so we'll serve approximately 300 students in 9 through 11. And the percentage of these students who qualify for free or reduced lunch through the federal school lunch program kind of bounces between 90 and 95%. So most of them are coming from homes where there's either low income or no income. Yeah. One of the really special things about our school is that 100% of our students are enrolled in either honors courses or AP courses or a combination of both. And so we've basically said that this is going to be the bar. We're going to say, here's the expectation. The expectation is that when you graduate from this high school, you'll be ready to go to any 4-year college or university that you can gain acceptance to. our hope is that our students, 100% of them will go, 100% of them will be accepted, or at least are on track to be accepted to a 2 or 4-year college or university. But we also, want students to be able to choose what they want to do. We don't want to force anyone to go to college, but we just know that statistically speaking, people who do go to college and have a college degree compared to those who don't, the quality of life, the security, the food security, the income security, all those things are just higher and better and less risky if they have.
Right. And when you're talking about how many of them are coming from a poverty, right? Mm-hmm. A level of poverty, the quality education helps lift out of that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what we're doing, and I guess we'll see if it works. We don't have any graduating alumni to point to say that everything works, but right now we're on track, and we're halfway through kind of the first 4 years, and so our goal is that in 2 years exactly we'll be announcing 100% of our students going to college, and they'll be announcing where they're going, and moms will be crying in the audience, and it'll be a beautiful sight. That's what we're hoping for.
Okay, awesome. So you mentioned that, according to you, you think the biggest obstacle that we are facing, at least here domestically in the United States, for quality education is is all around.
Quality teachers, yeah.
What would you say are the biggest successes, or what gives you hope? We know that that's the biggest challenge. What's the biggest bright side right now that we can see, or that you can see?
Around teachers, or just in general?
In general.
Like I said, I think you can point to any number of schools or districts who are figuring it out, who are doing it, who are closing the achievement and the opportunity gap between low income students and affluent students. There's a few schools that I could just right now put on blast and say, like, go check these guys out. They're the ones that we're trying to emulate. Schools like North Star Academy Collegiate Prep High School in Newark, New Jersey. That's a school with very similar racial and socioeconomic demographics to us. And they've been around for, 12, 13 years and just have been doing this work a long time. And they're sending just scores and scores and hundreds over time, hundreds and hundreds of students to Ivy League schools. They're sending them to Stanford and MIT. They're sending them to Harvard. Then they're sending them, even if they're not going to Ivy League schools, because there is a little bit of a Ivy misconception in our country. So not to say that Ivy is the ultimate goal, but they're just getting their students into the best and most competitive colleges in the country and best and most competitive programs. And North Star is doing it. The Knowledge is Power program, otherwise known as KIP. KIP schools are a national network of schools that are serving this demographic of student and have had tremendous success over the course of their existence.
What do you attribute the success to? How do you nail that? I'm sure it's very multifaceted, but.
Yeah. One of the biggest things, it is so multifaceted that we, need a volume 10, video cast to be able to cover it all. But I think one of the biggest things is high expectations. And it sounds a little bit like a cop-out answer, because it's like, okay, well, that doesn't really tell us. But in a sense, that's one of the most, if not the most important thing behind the schools that are doing it well, because one of the things that has prevented school districts or schools from achieving greatness, especially schools who either work in poverty-stricken communities or things like that, is the belief that they can do it in the first place. And then the whole thing becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So they say, well, these kids can't go to college, but they could get maybe a plumbing certificate or a technical, a welding certificate. And so they set the sights so much lower for a lot of these students. And then the students will pretty much get to whatever level you set for them. The truth is, expectations generally, whether they're high or low, become self-fulfilling prophecies. If you set the bar and say, Harvard is possible for you. Here's what it's going to take. It's going to take a ton of work.
Yes.
And it's going to take a lot of sweat and tears, and you're going to do it, and you can do it if you want to do it. Like, just hearing that changes paradigms and helps people think of themselves differently. And so KIPP has kind of built their entire program on high expectations. North Star, Uncommon Schools, Idea Public Schools in the Rio Grande Valley and throughout Texas, all really great examples of schools who are just taking kids who are otherwise marginalized, otherwise kind of written off as either laborers or skilled technicians, or maybe a technical degree or an associate's degree if they really wanted to be ambitious, and just said, all right, here's how many AP classes we're going to offer. You're going to take 5 of them. Or here's a trip we're going to take to visit some colleges. We're going to go to Princeton, Harvard, and Columbia. Which one do you want to go to? And just even saying that changes people's perceptions of themselves and their own belief in what's possible. So we've really stressed, and we definitely didn't come up with this idea. We've borrowed everything we've ever done from other schools. But we've really stressed this idea of high expectations to say, if you were born in the most affluent of neighborhoods, right now I'm sitting on the campus of UNC Chapel Hill, and Chapel Hill's public schools are among the best in the country. A lot of them are kids of professors and, part of the university system. And this is like where everybody in our state just looks with jaws dropped and just said, man, if only we could be like Chapel Hill. Well, the truth is, the kids who are born in Chapel Hill and go to Chapel Hill public schools, they just have kind of this high expectation built in of like, yeah, you're in the shadow of one of the greatest universities in the country, and this is who you are, and this is who you're going to be. So if we can just start treating our kids and helping them see that you're just as good as the kid in Chapel Hill. Yeah. Here's what the kid in Chapel Hill is going to do. He's going to take 10 AP classes before he graduates from high school. If we can provide that opportunity for our students and also help them believe that they can do it and be successful, then in some small way we're closing the opportunity gap for students and the achievement gap for students. We're just doing it on a very, very small scale. So then it goes back to my original point, which is when you can point to so many examples in this country of people who have done it, the question no longer becomes, can we do it? Can we get kids who have single parent, no money coming in, they're raising their 3 little brothers, their mom's never home, their dad's in jail, whatever the case. Can we get that student to go to college? If we can say that definitively, and we can point to a model that says we're doing this successfully every year we're able to produce amazing results on their AP tests or on their graduation rates or their college acceptance rates, then the question is, how do we do it on a bigger scale? It's no longer a question of feasibility or possibility. It's more a question of how do we actually scale this up and do it on a national level. Very
good. I love that. Good stuff. I love that it's just a simple thing as believing in somebody,
Yeah, which again, I was a little hesitant to say that because it is a little bit lofty and like kind of a cop-out answer. Just have high expectation. Of course, it's having the high expectations and backing it up with everything else that'll make it successful. Because you can just tell a group of kids, hey, you guys are smart. You can go to Harvard, and then leave the room. Nothing will change.
Right. You gotta provide them with all the
sweat and work that has to go into like providing the support systems and things that will help them actually achieve that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's not simplistic. There's a lot behind it.
It is super simple and yet super complex.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm wondering if you have any anecdotes you want to share with us, as you have really, you've seen a lot through your career.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, something that always comes to mind when I think about the challenge of education is the group of people that I joined Teach for America with. So I came in 2009, and I remember we took a bus from Washington, D.C. to Durham, North Carolina, which was a terrible experience. But at the end of that long, awful bus ride, we walked into a room in Durham, North Carolina at the University Hilton, which was kind of the gathering place for all of the Teach for America teachers who were going to work in Eastern North Carolina that year.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into that room for the first time. My wife was next to me, and we walk into this room, and like there was kind of an electric current in this building. The people, the conversations, just the energy, and it was just so powerful like, and it was also a moment of pride, was like, I'm a part of this group. This group is doing something. This is a powerful group of young, committed, dedicated individuals who are going to do some amazing things in education in Eastern North Carolina this year. And I was really proud to be a part of that. I still am. You fast forward 2 years, and at the end of our 2-year experience, I don't know the statistics, but I would say that probably close to 85 or 90% of those people left, right? And so they went and did another great thing. And, they went to law school, they went to medical school. Right now, I have friends who are doctors and lawyers, and they're doing amazing things. But it does highlight, I think, part of the tragedy of this system, right? Which is that all of us came to this fork in the road at the end of 2 years where we had to decide, are we going to continue our fight in education? Are we going to continue to keep proximity to this problem? Or are we going to pursue something else professionally? And I don't blame anyone who did. And I certainly, I was going to be one of them. I was on my way out the door to law school myself. So I don't blame people who leave, but it does highlight just how hard it is, because at one point, Teach for America had done a really good job of gathering this group of like-minded, mission-driven people who were among the most talented our nation has to offer. I mean, these were Ivy League graduates, these were fellowship and Rhodes Scholars, these were people who are just of the cream of the crop at their colleges, and we can't get them to choose education.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of just something that always stands out in my mind, is I can just go through the yearbook of all these different individuals that I met and knew and admired as teachers over the course of those 2 years. And almost every one of them, if I was to look through a yearbook, I'd say, no longer in education, no longer in education, no longer in education.
Yeah. Very telling.
So that is one of the biggest challenges. There are, of course, with that, amazing success stories as well. You have someone like my wife who never thought she would be a teacher. I practically dragged her into the whole experience. And she and I were both under the assumption that this was going to be a 2-year thing, and then we're going to leave.
Yeah.
She ended up becoming a teacher. She ended up staying in the classroom. So I went an administrative route. She stayed in the classroom. And she actually, for 3 years in a row, had the highest scores for 5th grade science in the state. She got so good that she was then hired to start teaching other teachers and coaching other teachers and developing them. And she still does that to some extent now. And she has just got kind of a Midas touch when it comes to teachers. She has really blossomed into not just a great teacher, but a great coach, and has had a huge impact. I mean, kind of an incalculable impact on not only so many teachers now as a coach, but so many kids vicariously. So she's just one of those awesome stories of what can happen when you get great people and provide for them a path. That's one of the biggest problems, is a lot of teachers don't see a path up. If you are a lawyer at a law firm, you start at the bottom and you can work your way up to a partner. Yeah. Or if you're in a business, you can start down here as a sales guy or a saleswoman and then come up and be an executive vice president or something. And so a lot of teachers just don't see a path, and they see themselves stuck in an income, black hole, and they just don't see, like, how can I stay with this work? Because a lot of the Teach for America core members wanted to stay close to the work, but they just looked at the simple economics and the math of it and just said, this doesn't seem feasible if I want to have a family.
Underpaid, underappreciated.
Yeah. So she's a great story of like what the power of providing pathways for teachers to stay in the classroom if they want, but also to coach or develop other people. And what would be ideal is that, you're able to, with time, with experience, and with results, have an income that is competitive to what you would have otherwise had you chosen to go to business school, or what you otherwise would have had you become a lawyer. So I think that's one of our big struggles.
All right. Well, I think I'm to the point in our interview where I want to ask you to provide some challenges or some little things that families can do to get involved in this pursuit of quality education, because as families, we have kids, we're invested. We want quality education for our kids. What can we do? How can we help?
Yeah.
How we can best be effective in this area.
Well, to start out with, I'd say start by teaching your kids that being a teacher is just as noble as doing anything else in life. Because in my opinion, teaching is the most noble of professions, and it has a lot of power in it to change lives and to change communities. And so I think that would be a big thing, is just teach your kids that there's that possibility for them. I also think just like small things is getting involved in your local school. There's a number of ways you can do that. Number one is you never know. You never realize how much teachers appreciate a little appreciation from parents, from students, from anyone really. And that's sometimes the exact thing that a teacher needs to stay in the classroom, because there are those moments where teaching is so hard that it's like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And I, along with probably every teacher who's ever taught, could point to like a note that they got or a phone call or a text or something from someone, whether it was a parent or a teacher or a student or a principal or whoever, that just said, hey, you're doing amazing work. Thank you so much for all you do. And those are like the anchors of like our lives in the classroom. So it's like, oh my gosh, this is why I do it. Look at what I just did with this kid. And yes, now I'm not crazy. Like someone else sees that there is value in this, right? So yeah. I think doing a lot to appreciate teachers, doing a lot to encourage your students to appreciate teachers. This is also just very low key, low lift, but sometimes has a huge impact, is being involved in either the PTA or attending school board meetings. School board meetings can get very boring, to put it lightly. But I think if there's something going on in your district that you care about, you got to take action. You got to speak up, get others involved, whether it's just through attending parent, PTA meetings, attending parent conferences. The more involved you are, the better the school is for it. It doesn't matter even if you disagree with a principal or a teacher, like just getting involved by nature of that process taking place, it improves the school. Because I know that as a principal, when I have parents come in, even when they might disagree with a policy or whatever, an action that we took, the fact that they speak up, the fact that they get involved helps me as a principal know, okay, here's what some of the families are feeling. And that also then helps inform my future decisions. Yeah. It doesn't mean we're always going to be, on the same page or singing Kumbaya, but it does allow for the school to be better because we're taking in all these different perspectives.
Right.
So I think that's really important not to overlook, which it is easy to do. I think if you want to go really gung-ho and get super, super involved, if the low-hanging fruit is not enough for you and you're still hungry, I would start to do more research on policies, school education policies, school policies that are either happening in your state or community, because the truth is there's a lot. Right now in my state, there are a number of things that are legal that are happening that shouldn't be. So if you know about something, whether it is the curriculum you feel like is on the wrong track, whether you feel like, hiring practices, vouchers, private school, whatever, those are just the things that you should stand up and speak out for. Not telling you which position to take, but I think getting involved on a policy level is important. Knowing what your elected officials think about certain policies, like where they stand on education issues, is really important. And then, if you're still hungry, I think at the end of that, like organizing, getting a group of people together. One of our school's favorite quotes, our staff quotes it a lot. It's the one from Margaret Mead. I think I'll butcher it, but she says something like, "Never doubt that a group of thoughtful, concerned citizens can change the world." Because indeed it is the only thing that ever has. So if you look back to some of the biggest, craziest changes in education policy in this country, whether it was the Little Rock Nine and Brown versus Board of Education. It was the Little Rock chapter of the NAACP who said, let's put some students into Central High School. And it was a group of concerned citizens who, went through hell, but they were the first in the country to integrate a Southern public school. So that kind of mentality of like, find out what's going on in your state. If you're in North Carolina, I could definitely provide you a laundry list that we could protest together, and then organize and get people rallied around it.
Love it. I thought you were going to say run for Board of Education.
That too. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's usually kind of a natural byproduct of the organizing, because the people who organize will get together and they'll say, this isn't right, and this politician is lining his pockets with the opposition's money. He's just going to do, so that's usually what sparks somebody to say, let's do something different. Who among us can run, and how can we get this person elected? So definitely run for school board. School board, it can be a surprisingly powerful post to hold, especially in states where they also are in control of money and taxes. Some school boards can raise local taxes. In our community, in our state, it's the Board of Commissioners elected countywide. But you start to control money, then you also can start to control that money being equitably distributed, as opposed to right now where there's a lot of, like I said before, zip codes determining whether or not you're getting money or opportunities or things like that.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. Honestly, thank you for sharing those ideas with us and for all that you do. I think you're absolutely right. Our teachers definitely need a boost. And if anyone wants to learn more about what you're doing or how to get involved, is there anywhere they should look, anywhere they can go?
I mean, if they want to get involved with our school specifically, it's www.hendersoncollegiate.org. If you want to learn more about Teach for America, I believe it's teachforamerica.org. If you want to get involved on any of the other levels that we discussed, it's going to your local school district or school board's website, finding out when their next meetings are. They unless it's a private school, I'm almost certain, regardless of the state, they have to post their meeting times, their public meetings, post their minutes from each meeting. So that's just a good starting point to get involved.
Perfect. Thank you. It's great stuff. Great information.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone for listening. You can learn more about what we are doing at socialgoodfamilies.com or on Instagram or Facebook at socialgoodfams. And stay tuned for our next expert interview. See you next time.